January 19, 2026, 11:34 a.m. Eastern Pacific Ocean, 240 miles off the coast of Guatemala. The U.S. Coast Guard cutter Stratton has been chasing 3 speedboats for 47 minutes. Standard drug interdiction. Routine pursuit. The boats are running. The Stratton is catching up. Then the speedboats do something nobody expected. They turn around, accelerate, head straight toward the Coast Guard ship at maximum speed. This isn't evasion. This isn't surrender. This is attack. And what happens in the next 90 seconds will reveal a new level of cartel desperation that changes everything about maritime drug enforcement. The chase started at 10:47 a.m. The Stratton's radar detected 3 fast-moving contacts. Classic. Profile. Speedboats. Low in the water. Heavy cargo. Moving north from Central America. The Stratton altered course to intercept. The boats ran. Standard procedure. Try to outrun the Coast Guard. Dump cargo if necessary. Escape if possible. The Stratton pursued at full speed. 28 knots. The speedboats were faster. Maybe 35 knots. But they couldn't outrun the Stratton's radar. Couldn't outrun the helicopter. At 11:02 a.m., the Stratton launched its MH-65 Dolphin helicopter. The helo overtook the speedboats in minutes, circled overhead. The door gunner could see everything. 3 boats. Go-fast boats. Fiberglass hulls. Triple outboard engines. Each boat riding low. Heavy cargo visible under tarps. U.S. Coast Guard. Stop your vessels. Prepare to be boarded. Standard procedure. Almost always ignored. The boats kept running. The Stratton closed distance. By 11:20 a.m., the cutter was 3 miles behind. Close enough to see the boats with optical systems. Close enough to deploy boarding teams if the boat stopped. They didn't stop. They accelerated, pushing their engines to maximum, creating huge rooster tails of spray, bouncing across the waves at dangerous speed. But something was wrong. The boats weren't zigzagging, weren't trying evasive maneuvers. They were running straight, due north, in perfect formation, as if coordinated. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen commanded the Stratton. 12 years Coast Guard. 6 drug interdiction deployments. She'd seen hundreds of pursuits. This one felt different. At 11:28 a.m., she ordered the warning shots. The Stratton's 25mm Bushmaster cannon fired a burst 500 yards ahead of the lead boat. Massive geysers of water erupted. The universal signal. Stop or we engage. The boats kept running. No response. No radio contact. Just engines screaming. Spray flying. Running north. At 11:32 a.m., the Stratton was 1 mile behind. Close enough for the helicopter's thermal camera to see heat signatures. 3 crew per boat. 9 men total. No unusual activity. Just driving. Hard. Commander Chen made the decision. Prepare to disable. Target. Engines. The 25mm cannon could punch holes in the speedboat hulls. Destroy engines. Stop them dead in the water. Risky with the cargo aboard. Cocaine doesn't explode. But if the boat sank, evidence went to the bottom. Still, she had authorization. Rules of engagement allowed disabling fire. She gave the order. That's when the boats turned around. All 3. Simultaneously. Sharp turn, 180 degrees. Engines at full throttle. Heading straight toward the Stratton. Not veering. Not evading. Directly toward the Coast Guard cutter. Distance, 1 mile. Closing speed, 60 knots combined. Time to impact, 60 seconds. Stay with me. Because what happens in the next minute reveals why this attack changes everything about the drug war. Commander Chen's first thought was confusion. Why would they attack? Speedboats can't ram a 4 or 18-foot cutter. It would be suicide. The boats would be destroyed. The cargo lost. Everyone aboard killed. Then her training took over. Battle stations. All hands. General quarters. The Stratton's crew sprinted to weapons positions. The 25mm cannon swiveled. The M240 machine guns manned, ready to engage. But there was still a question. Why? At 11:33 a.m., 45 seconds to impact, the helicopter pilot radioed new information. Stratton, Dolphin 6. I've got visual on unusual cargo. Multiple fuel barrels visible. Repeat, fuel barrels on all 3 boats. Fuel barrels. Not cocaine. Fuel. Commander Chen understood instantly. These weren't drug boats anymore. They were bombs. Floating, improvised explosive devices, packed with fuel and narcotics. Accelerating toward her ship at 60 knots. The boats weren't trying to escape. They were trying to destroy the Stratton. Ram the ship. Explode on impact. Sink the cutter. Kill the crew. Destroy the evidence. All in one suicide attack. She had 30 seconds to stop them. All weapons. Engage. Destroy those boats. The 25mm Bushmaster opened fire. The sound was a continuous hammering. Each round high explosive incendiary, designed to penetrate armor and explode inside. Against fiberglass speedboats, the effect was devastating. The first burst hit the lead boat. 3 rounds. Center mass. The boat didn't just stop. It disintegrated. The fuel barrels detonated. Massive fireball. Orange and black. The shock wave, visible on the water. Burning debris scattered across 200 yards. The explosion was so large, so violent, that everyone on the Stratton's bridge flinched. That boat had been carrying enough fuel to level a building, and it had been seconds from hitting them. But 2 boats were still coming, still accelerating, still targeting the Stratton. Distance, half a mile. 20 seconds to impact. The 25mm cannon engaged the second boat. Longer burst. 8 rounds. The first 3 missed. Rounds splashing around the boat. The 4th hit. Then 5th. 6th. The boat exploded. Another massive fireball. This one larger than the first. The fuel barrels created a secondary explosion that sent burning fuel spreading across the water. An oil slick on fire. Black smoke billowing into the sky. 1 boat left. Distance, quarter mile. 10 seconds to impact. The M240 machine guns opened fire. 2 guns. Port and starboard. 50 caliber rounds at 850 rounds per minute. The gunners walked their fire toward the boat. Tracers streaking across the water. Most rounds missing, but enough hitting. The speedboat's hull was being chewed apart. Fiberglass shattering. Engines damaged. But the boat kept coming. Momentum carried it forward. The crew dead or dying. But the boat still moving. Still on collision course. 5 seconds to impact. The 25mm cannon fired 1 final burst. 6 rounds. Directly into the approaching boat. The first round hit the fuel barrels. The boat exploded 100 yards from the Stratton. The fireball was enormous. Larger than the other 2 combined. The shock wave hit the cutter. Rocked the ship. Shattered windows on the bridge. Crew members thrown to the deck. Burning fuel rained down on the Stratton's forward deck. Small fires started. Damage control teams deployed immediately. Fire extinguishers. Hoses. Within 2 minutes, the fires were out. Within 5, the deck was secure. The attack was over. 3 boats destroyed. 8 cartel members dead. 1 confirmed killed in the explosion. 7 missing, presumed dead in the water. The Stratton was damaged, but operational. Minor hull damage. Broken windows. Some crew members with minor injuries from being thrown during the shock wave. But they'd survived. The suicide attack had failed. Barely. Commander Chen stood on the bridge, looking at the burning debris field. 3 massive oil slicks on fire. Wreckage floating everywhere. Bodies. Engines. Hull fragments. And scattered across the water, white packages. Cocaine. Thousands of pounds. Floating. Sinking. Burning. The cartel had just tried to sink a U.S. Coast Guard cutter. Deliberately. With suicide boats. Packed with explosives. In what amounted to a maritime terrorist attack. This wasn't drug trafficking anymore. This was war. But the question remained. Why? Why sacrifice 3 boats? 8 men. And all that cocaine? Why attack instead of run? Why suicide instead of surrender? The answer was in the wreckage, and it would take 3 days to piece together the truth. The Coast Guard deployed rescue swimmers, searched for survivors, found none. All 8 cartel members were dead. 3 killed instantly in the explosions. 5 drowned. Their bodies recovered floating among the debris. The Stratton's crew spent 6 hours recovering evidence, pulling wreckage from the water, collecting cocaine packages, documenting everything. The helicopter took aerial photographs. The investigation began. The cocaine alone was staggering. 4,200 pounds. 70 packages of 60 pounds each. Street value, $210 million. The largest single seizure the Stratton had ever made. One of the largest in Coast Guard history. But the fuel barrels told a different story. Each boat had been carrying 6 55-gallon drums, 90 barrels total, 4,950 gallons of gasoline and diesel fuel mixed. That wasn't smuggling fuel. That was weaponizing it. The boats themselves were expensive. Custom-built go-fast boats, each worth $400,000 to $500,000. Triple Yamaha outboard engines, $30,000 each. GPS systems, radar, communications equipment. Total value per boat, over $600,000. 3 boats, $1.8 million. Add the cocaine, add the fuel, add the crew's equipment. The total loss to the cartel was approximately $212 million. Why would any organization sacrifice $212 million in a suicide attack that had minimal chance of success? The investigation expanded. DEA analyzed the wreckage. CIA reviewed satellite imagery. Intelligence agencies traced the boat's origin. Financial forensics tracked the money. The truth emerged slowly, piece by piece. And when it finally came together, it revealed something far more disturbing than a simple suicide attack. The cocaine wasn't random. It was tagged, marked with specific symbols. Intelligence identified it as belonging to Sinaloa Cartel, specifically a faction led by a lieutenant named Hector El Fantasma Ramirez, the Ghost, one of the cartel's most ruthless operators. But here's the thing. El Fantasma didn't do suicide missions. He was a businessman, calculated, risk-averse. He wouldn't waste $212 million on a failed attack, unless the attack wasn't meant to succeed. Satellite imagery reviewed. The Stratton's pursuit tracked backward. The boats hadn't been running from Guatemala. They'd been running from Mexico, from a beach 30 miles south of Acapulco. And they'd been tracked by Mexican naval radar the entire time. Mexican authorities had known about the boats, known their route, known their cargo. They'd passed that intelligence to U.S. Coast Guard. The Stratton had been positioned specifically to intercept these boats. The cartel knew it too. They knew the boats would be intercepted, knew the Coast Guard was waiting, knew the chase was inevitable. So why did they send the boats anyway? The answer wasn't about the cocaine. It was about the crew. The 8 dead cartel members were identified through fingerprints and DNA. 6 were low-level operatives. Disposable. Expendable. Men who'd taken the job for money and didn't know they were on a suicide mission. But two were different. Two were informants. Confirmed by DEA. Both had been providing intelligence to U.S. authorities for 6 months. Information about routes, schedules, shipments, leadership. They'd been discovered, identified as traitors, and El Fantasma had sent them on a suicide mission. Told them it was a normal smuggling run. Put them on boats packed with explosives. Made sure they'd be intercepted by Coast Guard. Made sure they'd die. The suicide attack wasn't about sinking the Stratton. It was about killing the informants, destroying the evidence they carried, and sending a message to anyone else thinking about cooperating with American authorities. But there was more. The remaining 6 crew members weren't random either. 5 had family connections to rival cartels. Brothers, cousins, nephews. 1 was related to a Jalisco New Generation leader. 1 to a Gulf cartel operator. 1 to a Beltran Leyva family member. El Fantasma had loaded boats with his enemies' relatives, sent them on a suicide mission, made sure they died attacking American ships. This created problems for the rival cartels. Their people had attacked U.S. Coast Guard. That brought heat, federal attention, investigations, arrests. The attack accomplished multiple goals: killed informants, destroyed evidence, eliminated relatives of rivals, created chaos for competitors, and cost El Fantasma relatively little. The cocaine was already marked for seizure. The boats were registered to shell companies that couldn't be traced. The fuel was stolen. Even the crew were expendable. The $212 million loss wasn't a loss. It was an investment. In reputation. In fear. In demonstrating what happens to informants and rivals. But here's the thing that kept Commander Chen awake at night. The thing that disturbed everyone who understood what had really happened. El Fantasma had weaponized drug interdiction, turned U.S. Coast Guard into an execution squad, made American sailors complicit in his revenge plot. The Coast Guard had destroyed those boats, killed those men, done exactly what the cartel wanted. They'd had no choice. The attack was real. The threat was genuine. The boats were bombs. If they hadn't fired, if they'd hesitated, the Stratton might have been sunk. Crew members killed. American sailors dead. But by defending themselves, they'd become El Fantasma's instruments. They'd killed his enemies for him, destroyed evidence for him, sent his message for him. That's the genius of it. That's the horror of it. The cartel had found a way to use American military force against itself, to turn interdiction into execution, to make the Coast Guard serve cartel interests while believing they were fighting the cartels. The investigation concluded. Report filed. Recommendations made. New tactics developed. Rules of engagement reviewed. Training updated. The Coast Guard adapted, learned, evolved. But the precedent was set. The tactic was proven. And 3 months later, it happened again. Different cartel. Different location. Same method. Suicide boats attacking Coast Guard vessels. Different crew. Same result. Everyone dead. Evidence destroyed. Message sent. It's happening more frequently now. The tactic spreading. Cartels learning from El Fantasma. Copying his method. Weaponizing interdiction. Turning Coast Guard vessels into execution chambers. And there's no good counter. Can't let the boats hit the ships. Can't not fire on approaching threats. Can't distinguish suicide attacks from genuine attacks until too late. The Coast Guard is trapped in a tactical loop designed by cartel strategists. That's the real story of January 19th. Not the firefight. Not the bravery. Not the destroyed speedboats. But the realization that the enemy had found a way to weaponize American strength, to turn Coast Guard effectiveness into cartel advantage. Commander Chen received a commendation for her quick thinking. Her crew was praised for their response time, their accuracy, their courage under fire. The Stratton was repaired, returned to service, back on patrol within 2 weeks. But Chen knows the truth, knows that every interdiction now carries the possibility of being manipulated, knows that every speedboat chase might be a cartel operation, using Coast Guard as executioners. The 8 men who died that day weren't heroes. They were pawns, sacrificed by El Fantasma for tactical advantage, used and discarded. Their families received nothing, no compensation, no explanation, just death notifications and closed caskets. 2 were informants who'd tried to help, who'd provided intelligence, who'd thought they were doing the right thing. They died because they trusted American promises of protection, died because the cartel was smarter, faster, more ruthless. 6 were relatives of rival cartels, sent to die to create problems for their families, to bring heat, to cause chaos. They probably didn't know they were on a suicide mission, probably thought they were just high risk but manageable. They were wrong. The Coast Guard destroyed 3 boats, killed 8 men, seized 4,200 pounds of cocaine. From a tactical standpoint, it was a perfect interdiction. Textbook execution. No American casualties. Evidence recovered. Threat eliminated. From a strategic standpoint, it was a defeat. The Coast Guard did exactly what the cartel wanted, killed exactly who the cartel wanted dead, destroyed exactly what the cartel wanted destroyed, served cartel interests while believing they were fighting cartels. That's what keeps Commander Chen awake. That's what haunts the crew. The knowledge that they were used, that their courage and skill and training were manipulated, that they won the battle but served the enemy's strategy. And there's no solution, no way to avoid it, because the threat is real. The boats are bombs. If they don't fire, sailors die. If they do fire, they serve cartel interests. Damned either way, El Fantasma is still operating, still shipping cocaine, still eliminating rivals and informants, still using American Coast Guard as his personal death squad. And there's nothing anyone can do about it, because he's not attacking American ships. He's using American ships to attack his enemies. He's weaponized interdiction, turned the drug war into his weapon, made American strength serve his purposes. That's the innovation. That's the evolution. That's what January 19th taught the cartels. That suicide attacks work, but because they accomplish cartel objectives while appearing to be defeats. The burning speedboats, the dead crew members, the destroyed cocaine, all of it served El Fantasma's purposes. All of it weakened his rivals. All of it was exactly what he planned. And the Coast Guard had no choice but to participate. That's the truth about the suicide attack off Guatemala. The truth that nobody wants to acknowledge. That the cartels have found a way to weaponize American military force. That interdiction serves their purposes. That every destroyed speedboat might be exactly what the cartel wanted. The Stratton is back on patrol, chasing speedboats, intercepting drug runners, protecting American waters, doing its mission. But now every chase carries the question, is this real? Or is this another El Fantasma operation? Are we stopping drugs? Or executing his enemies? There's no way to know. Not until the wreckage is analyzed, the bodies identified, the intelligence reviewed. By then it's too late. The mission is accomplished. The Coast Guard has served cartel interests again. And somewhere in Mexico, El Fantasma is planning the next operation. The next suicide attack. The next group of expendable pawns to send against American ships. The next tactical victory that serves his strategic goals. because he's learned the secret. That American strength can be turned against itself. That Coast Guard effectiveness serves cartel purposes. That the drug war is a weapon that cuts both ways. The boats keep coming. The Coast Guard keeps intercepting. The cycle continues. But now everyone knows. Every destroyed speedboat might be exactly what the enemy wanted. Every tactical victory might be a strategic defeat. That's the lesson from January 19, 2026. The day the cartels learned to weaponize interdiction. The day suicide attacks became cartel strategy. The day American strength became the enemy's tool. The burning speedboats. The dead crew. The seized cocaine. All of it was victory. All of it was defeat. All of it was exactly what El Fantasma planned. And there's nothing anyone can do to stop it.